Hey everybody, this is Troy over at Uncomfortable Truths. Thanks for checking me out. So today we're going to be talking about an article from the New York Times. It was written by one of the guest columnists, Mr. Moyn, who is a professor of law over at Yale University. Now, this guy is not a Trump supporter really in any way, shape, or form, but he is advocating that the United States Supreme Court overturn the Colorado Supreme Court's decision to take Trump off of the ballot. He thinks that this should be a unanimous decision, so 9-0. And we're going to talk a little bit about why, from a liberal perspective, this would actually be a great outcome for the United States Supreme Court to actually go through. So, anyway, we're going to get right into it. We'll have the full article in the show notes. I encourage everybody to read the entire thing. It's it's a pretty short read, but he does a really great job outlining the case. But anyway, getting into it, Mr. Moyn is a law professor at Yale University. And when Donald Trump appeals the Colorado decision disqualifying him from the ballot, in that state's Republican primary, the Supreme Court should overturn the ruling unanimously. Like many of my fellow liberals, I would long to live in a country where Americans had never elected Mr. Trump, let alone sided with him by the millions in his claim that he won an election he lost and that he did nothing wrong afterwards. But nobody lives in that America, and to bar Mr. Trump from the ballot now would be the wrong way to show him to the exits of the political system after years of strife. Some aspects of American election law are perfectly clear, like the rule that prohibits candidates from becoming president before they turn 35. But many others are invitations to judges to resolve uncertainty as they see fit, based in part on their own politics. Take Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which blocks insurrectionists from running for office, a provision originally aimed at former Confederates in the wake of the Civil War. There may well be instances in which the very survival of a democratic regime is at stake if the noxious candidates or parties are not banned, as in West Germany after World War II. But in this case, what Section 3 requires is far from straightforward. Keeping Mr. Trump off the ballot could put democracy at more risk rather than less. Part of the danger lies in the fact that what actually happened on January 6th and Mr. Trump's exact role beyond months of election denial and entreaties to government officials to side with him is still too broadly contested. The Colorado court deferred to a lower court on the facts, but it was a bench trial, meaning that no jury has ever assessed what happened and that many Americans still believe Mr. Trump did nothing wrong. So I want everybody to keep in mind that at this point, former President Trump has not had a jury trial that's actually said that, yes, the facts of this do indicate that he has committed insurrection. So I think that's something that we should really keep an eye on. But anyway, going forward, a Supreme Court that affirms that the Colorado ruling would have to succeed in constructing a consensual narrative where others, including armies of journalists, the January 6th Commission, and recent indictments, have failed. But if the Supreme Court were to exclude Mr. Trump from the ballot, seconding the Colorado court on each legal nicety when so many people still disagree on the facts, it would have disastrous consequences. For one thing, it would strengthen the hand of a Supreme Court that liberals have rightly complained grabs too much power too routinely. Joe Biden came into office calling for a re-examination of whether the Supreme Court needs reform, and there would be considerable irony if he were re-elected after that very body was seen by millions to preempt a democratic choice. So I want to just stop here for a second and point out that liberals especially have been talking about how they don't really trust the court system, how the Supreme Court is overreaching, and then now that things are kind of going in their direction on the Supreme Court, they don't really want to curtail that anymore. They want to actually go ahead and give more power to the court. Now, to me, this is something that raises a little bit of a red flag because it seems like it's not a very principled position. It's literally just outcome based. So going on ahead, worse, it is not obvious how many would accept a Supreme Court decision that erased Mr. Trump's name from every ballot in the land. Liberals with bad memories of Bush v. Gore, which threw an election to one candidate rather than counting votes, have often regretted accepting that ruling as supinely as they did. And rejecting Mr. Trump's candidacy could well invite a repeat of that kind of violence that led to the prohibition on insurrectionists in public life in the first place. The purpose of Section 3 was to stabilize the country after a civil war. It was not to cause another one. As it unfolds, the effort to disqualify Mr. Trump could make him more popular than ever. As harsh experiences since 2016 has taught, legalistic maneuvers haven't hurt him in the polls. And Democrats do nothing to increase their popularity by setting out to save democracy when it looks if their legal basis for proceedings is too flimsy, as if they are afraid of practicing it. That the approval ratings of the Democratic standard bearer, Mr. Biden, have created as prosecutions of Mr. Trump, and now this Colorado ruling have accumulated, indicates that trying again is a mistake both of principle and of strategy. So this is something that I kind of have to stop here and agree with again. Uh, the principles of it we've talked quite a bit about, but also from a strategic point of view, I don't really understand why the Democrats are even pushing this. I mean, I do understand if it's successful that they are going to get him off of the ballot in certain states, but it's likely going to be strong blue states when it comes to presidential elections that they kick him off of. And the red states are unlikely to actually get him off anyway. In the swing states, maybe you get him off of a few, and that's where the game really is. But when it comes to the Supreme Court actually accepting this, it's unlikely that a Supreme Court that is held by conservative justices is going to get him off anyway. So, from a strategic perspective, I actually wonder if they're doing more harm to their own cause than they are actually helping it. Maybe they look at this as kind of a last ditch effort, thinking that, well, we're looking at the polls and it doesn't appear that President Biden actually has a great chance of getting reelected. So this is a better chance, than if we were to actually try to have a fair election, between the two of them. So anyway, we'll go on ahead, but that does seem like a very good point. Justices have fretted about the damage to their legitimacy when their decisions look like political choices. They often are. But when stakes are this high, the best political choice for the justices is to avoid final judgment on contested matters of fact and law and to let the people decide. The truth is that this country has to be allowed to save itself. The Supreme Court must act, but only to place the burden on Mr. Trump's political opponents to make their case in the political arena. This is coming from a very liberal perspective. I know there's things that a lot of people in my audience aren't going to agree with, that was said. There's things in this that I don't agree with. However, I do think the article was really a fantastic summary of why this is something that on the right and the left, people should agree that it is not acceptable to be taking Donald Trump off of ballots. This is something that should be left up to the people to decide. Now, if the American voters think that Donald Trump committed an insurrection and tried to overthrow democracy, I actually don't think that they would vote to put him back in power. This is something that a bunch of people are disagreeing with, but I just, in my heart of hearts, don't believe for a second that most Americans are actually in favor of putting an insurrectionist in charge of the White House. That's my own personal belief. I know that that's contested, and that's okay, but it should be contested in a political arena because the facts of the case have not been, seen and heard by a jury at this point. Once that were to change, and if it were actually established that he, in fact, did try to overthrow our democracy, then of course it would be a different story. But those facts haven't really come out. The American people don't necessarily all agree that this was something that was a true insurrection and that he did try to overthrow American democracy. Now, some people may not like that, but the fact that it's contested shows that we should actually be voting about this and not just giving this off to unelected judges to make the decision for us. So anyway, everybody, I appreciate you taking the time to watch. I know the holidays are coming up. So whether you agree with me, disagree with me, hate me or love me, I really hope that everybody has a fantastic Christmas. Enjoy the holidays. Spend as much time with your family and friends as you can. If you like the show, go ahead, hit like and subscribe. Any agreements, disagreements, please go ahead and try to put those in the comments. I'm as responsive as I can be in those. So everybody, thanks again for your time, and I hope you have a great holiday. Merry Christmas.